Welcome to Apprentice Marks. My name is John, and winter is fast approaching up here in the Great White North, which means that soon this is going to be a frozen over hellscape covered in 6 feet of ice and snow. Alright, well maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but the point of the matter is, this building used to be a garage, and the old garage door was never properly insulated. That made it difficult to heat the building, so I built this wall where the old garage doors used to be. Now I should have no problem keeping the workshop warm in the winter. I started by opening the old doors and removing the trim from the inside of the door frame. Once it was gone, I could begin framing in the new wall. The first studs I lay are for the bottom and the top of the door frame. And then I'll start on the left-hand side and work my way across. Now this isn't a load-bearing wall, and more importantly, it may not be a permanent wall. I might want to remove it at some point in the future if I want to put a proper garage door in here. So when I'm putting this together, I'm just using wood screws. That way, if I ever decide to remove the wall, it'll be really easy to back it out and take it apart. The garage was standing just fine without this wall here, so the build quality of it isn't really going to impact whether or not my workshop falls down around my ears anytime soon. Now I've got the top stud and the far left stud put up here, and I got to start working out where all of the in-between studs are going to be as we go across the door. The biggest thing that's important here is that I've got sheets of plywood that are going to sheathe the inside of this thing. That's what I've got on the walls instead of drywall like you might have inside of your house. Now, a sheet of plywood is 8 feet long by 4 feet wide, and I'm going to use 2 sheets of plywood. They're going to stand up tall here, so the total width that I can get out of a sheet is 4 feet. That means that at least one of my studs has to be 48 inches off of this sheet of plywood that's already here that I've got to meet up against. So I've got to figure out where 48 inches off of here is, and then drop a stud down so that my next piece of plywood has somewhere to sit on its edge. This point is going to be the middle of one of my studs because it's going to be the spot where the 2 sheets of plywood that cover the door join up. It took me most of the afternoon to frame in the new wall. I put up the 3 studs, and then added cross members between them for added strength. The sun goes down early these days, so I finished up just as it began to get dark. Good morning, sunshine, and welcome to day 2 of the project. First job this morning, getting some electrical work done. Let's get to it. Since this is going to be a permanent wall, I want to add a couple of receptacles to it. There's an electrical circuit running above the door to power the pot lights on the outside of the house, and I can tap into that and run my new receptacles off of it. That'll work. I've put 2 receptacles on this wall, one kind of at chest height, about 47 inches up from the ground, and one down at floor height, about a foot up from the ground. This matches the pattern that I've established on the other 3 walls of the workshop, and makes it easy to always find somewhere to plug a tool in. Okay, let's talk for a minute about how to wire a receptacle. Now, it should go without saying that electricity is dangerous, and that if you're not comfortable with this sort of thing, what you're going to want to do is get in touch with an electrician. I happen to have a couple of friends who are licensed electricians, so I've got somebody watching my back to make sure I don't do something stupid. That said, I do believe that it's really important to learn to do basic tasks around your house. That's the whole point of this channel, after all. But it should go without saying that you should never do anything that makes you uncomfortable or that could be dangerous if you don't understand the proper safety precautions. Safety chat out of the way, let's proceed. Coming into the box, which would normally be on your wall here, is your wire. It's a 14-2 Romex in this case, which means that it's 14 gauge wire, and there are 2 leads in here. Never mind the ground is extra. What you want to do when you start is get the wire coming through the top of the box and clamped into the box here so that it can't be easily pulled out. And then you're going to wrap your ground wire around one of the screws in the back of the box and screw that sucker down. Now, with that done, you want to leave yourself, about 6 inches of wire coming out of the box. Cut the ends off. And we're going to strip 2 wires that have coatings on them. This leaves you with 2 wires. One of them is going to be white, that's your neutral, and one of them is going to be colored. Usually it'll be red or black, and that's your hot. You want to put a loop on the end of each wire. And then you want to take a look at your receptacle. Now, standard receptacle uses different colors for the screws on all the sides. You see the screws on this side are white, air quotes, meaning they're like a burnished aluminum. This screw down here is green. That one's for the ground. And these screws over here are brass. Those ones are for the hot side. So very simply, we attach the white cable to one of the white screws, paying attention to the direction in which we're going to clamp the cable down with the screw. So in this case, I got to turn this screw clockwise, you know, righty, tighty, lefty, loosey, to clamp this down. So I want to put the cable in so that it runs clockwise around the screw, meaning that the hook part is on the right-hand side. This way, when I tighten this screw down, if the tightening action and the friction on the wire pulls on the cable, it pulls it around the screw in the direction that we're going. So we're not accidentally backing it off by attaching the screw. On the opposite side, on the hot side, we're going to put the loop in the other direction. So again, the loop is going clockwise around the screw so that when we tighten the screw, it's pulling the cable tight. And then finally, just like the box, this is a component on the circuit, which means that it needs to be grounded. So we'll bring our ground cable around and we're going to hook it up to the green screw. And that's really all there is to it. Now, if you were installing this receptacle in a circuit where the cable then had to go on to additional receptacles down the wall, you would hook your secondary cables up to these remaining screws here, right? So you would hook the other white wire up to this white screw here, and you'd hook your other black or red wire up to this brass screw over here. And the circuit will be completed through the receptacle, so you don't have to have any wire connectors or anything inside of the box. The bare copper ground wire from the other cable that comes into the box would be connected to the other screw in the back of the box so that the connection will be made through the box. With everything screwed on nice and tight, we just coil up our wires, shove them back into the box, get our receptacle seated nicely, and then use the screws on the faceplate of the receptacle to screw it into the box. And that is how you wire a receptacle. Just do me a favor and try not to shock the shit out of yourself, okay? I got these doors open for the very last time. I'm going to seal the outside with polyurethane plastic. I'm going to stuff it full of insulation, and then I'm going to put another layer of the polyurethane plastic on the inside. The idea here is just to get it as sealed off as possible from the outdoors and stop moisture and cold from coming on into the shop. With the insulation in place, this door is now a wall. It's time to screw it shut for the last time. I covered the inside of the insulated wall with the same poly that I used on the outside. I finished this late on Sunday afternoon and didn't find time to continue with the job until 2 weeks later. I screwed up. You see, it turns out that you're not supposed to put polyurethane on the outside of the insulation. I posted a picture of the work in progress on Facebook, and my uncle told me that if you put poly on the cold side, then you're going to trap moisture in between the two layers, and you can end up getting mold and mildew and all kinds of crap in there that you don't want. It's like condoms, kids. 2 is not necessarily better than 1. I'm going to take this off and I'm going to replace it with some Tyvek. Tyvek is a housing wrap insulation. You see it on new homes all the time. It's a layer, but it's permeable to moisture, so it'll help to stop wind gusts and stuff like that that would cause, drafts inside the building, but it allows moisture to pass through, so you're not going to get any bugs growing inside of your walls. I am going to cheat a wee bit and put a strip of the old poly across the bottom just to make sure that as I shovel snow and crap up against the bottom of the garage, it doesn't push in and leak into the shop over the course of the winter. By the way, I'm not sure if you can hear that, but there's literally a Santa Claus parade happening like a half a block that way. Hi there! Merry Christmas to you! Last step before sealing this all up, I'm going to use this tuck tape to seal over the seams to make sure that I'm not getting air leakage between any of the sheets that I put on. That's it. Time to screw the door shut again. So I gotta put OSB on this wall behind me, the one that we've studied in, and the problem is that none of the corners are square. It's an old building, it's built like 50 years ago, and just fucking nothing lines up. What I've done, you might remember that I put this center stud in here, and I made sure that when I did, there was a 90-degree corner down at the bottom between that stud and the floor. So I'm gonna use that 90-degree corner as the reference for this sheet of plywood. Basically, I'm gonna say that 90 degrees lines up with a 90-degree corner on the sheet of plywood that I'm gonna use, and I'm gonna take measurements off of this center stud. I'm gonna measure top to floor, and I'm gonna measure stud to wall in both spots, and I'm gonna figure out what the shape of the polygon is that I gotta cut out of this wood to perfectly fit in that spot. I need to figure out where these receptacle boxes are on our sheet. I think I want to cut at, say, 26 5/8, and then again at 30 3/4, and that'll cut out a nice square box there. So we've got the receptacle box marked out here. It's cut a little larger than it actually is in real life so that the plywood should fit right over it. And I'm gonna go ahead and cut it out with the drill and jigsaw. Once plywood was on the wall, it was time to apply a coat of paint. Now, luckily, I still had some of the paint left over from when I did the original paint job in this room. It's like a year and a half, maybe 2 years old, so like hopefully it's fine. I'll probably end up having to do 2 coats of this stuff and then a little bit of brushwork on the edges just to clean them up. That's it for this project. I'm really happy with the way the wall turned out, and I can already tell that it's going to be a whole lot easier to heat the workshop without cold air leaking around the edges of those old garage doors. If you like what I'm doing on the channel, give this video a thumbs up. If you want to see more from me, subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to keep up with what I'm doing between videos, make sure you follow me over on Instagram or Twitter. I'm at Apprentice Marks in both places. Thanks for checking it out. Have a good one.